me start by apologizing because I am not a public speaker. I really am not. Nor am I a very strong lecturer. I've always felt like my gift in teaching was to throw out questions, to instigate and incite, at times, conversations and arguments about literature. I hear Chris laughing over here. But what I have done, I took about, no lie, about 25 hours this past week to come up with what I hope is no more than about 15 minutes of a subject I feel incredibly passionate about. And I don't have any awesome pictures or prezi. I need you to teach me how to do that, Chris. But I do have what I feel passionate about, and that is books and words. And what I want to talk to you about today is why it's important, not just to me, but why you should feel some connection to what I feel are sacred texts. So, relevancy in the classroom, reaching the modern world with an old message. The word relevancy, whether you realize it or not, literally strikes fear in the heart of every classroom teacher. Any conference I've ever attended where the speaker mentioned about making it relevant, I'm like, how do I do that? How do I make it relevant? What are my students going to enjoy about Shakespeare? What am I going to have to kind of, coach them towards? How can I make this relevant and not just the story of, a bunch of dead white men, as we often joke about? Teachers, and I know this is true of myself, we feel passionate about our subject matter. We feel like it gives meaning to our lives, but when it comes to making you see that as students, sometimes we're kind of trapped in a teenage-like anxiety of, are we the weird ones? Are we different from everyone else? I spent a lot of years teaching literature on the grounds that students needed to know it, and I completely ignored the question weighing on their mind, why? Why do I need to know this? What will happen if I don't know this? This year, more than any other in my 11 years in the classroom, I have asked my students to provide more feedback regarding the relevancy of literature in their own lives. And I asked for a number of students to provide input today in developing these notes. And so I'm going to share with you some quotes, and then Chris, one of my beloved students, is going to conclude with a student perspective about relevancy over these 4 years of our literature. Everyone know Miriam? Okay, another one of my dear and beloved students. I asked her via email to send me some notes about what her thoughts were about the last 4 years. And this is what she said. If one is to be considered intelligent, one must be well read. Intelligent people desire intelligent conversation, and reading fosters that level of intelligence that allows you to see even the smallest nuance of conversation. Literature allows us to see the threads that connect us all. It is a universal language that transcends all other factors in expressing its many subdivisions of raw talent, emotion, and expression. It's truly beautiful, and she provided me with my thesis for today. So how do you take these 4 years of literature and see those threads? Here's what students often see when they enter high school. 9th grade, English 1. You're issued an obnoxious 1,500-page textbook and told you're embarking on a study of world literature that will cover Homer to Shakespeare, Dickens to Steinbeck. But what does that mean? What does it mean? How does mythology offer a foundation for understanding the realism that pervades of mice and men? Can you make that connection? 10th grade. Repeat 9th grade. 1,500 pages of obnoxious text, mythology to Shakespeare, Julius Caesar. Feel free to yawn. Students are taught the difference in literary genre, literary devices, but are they ever taught how to make the connections between the thematic ideas of the Iliad and Shakespeare's Julius Caesar? 11th grade. It's a tired old hat now, except now this year we're going to focus primarily on American literature and the works of American writers such as William Bradford, Samuel Sewell, Jonathan Edwards, literature that can seem dry, and oftentimes we miss seeing how Miller's The Crucible and Hawthorne's The Minister's Black Veil reveal the early American fascination with internal sin and external goodness, a power struggle that pervades even modern literature. 12th grade, same process. Now it's British literature, Grendel, Beowulf, Chaucer, Shakespeare, all delivered with healthy doses of speeches that begin with, when you're in college next year. Yeah, can you hear the eyeballs rolling? This structure of learning is neither the fault of the teacher nor the student. This is a script written so far back that we don't even understand its purpose, nor do we understand the consequence. The truth is, a survey course of literature is only useful for the student who truly loves to read and who may pursue a degree in literature. A survey course in literature helps you find your own niche, your own particular fascination with literature. Feminist studies, critical theory, American literature, nonfiction versus fiction, whatever. But our students don't need survey courses. We need relevancy. We need relevancy that inspires us to want to read. Not just something that a teacher assigns, but just to read, to think about what we've read, to write critically about what we've read, to engage in a fair exchange of ideas where it's okay if I don't agree with you, but we can both support our analysis. That's what students need. To paraphrase Miriam once again, the role of the teacher is to help students see that literature is nothing if not human life in action. After all, literature is the creation of man and his desire to find himself, understand himself, and make himself known in the world around him. 6 years ago, I experienced an incredible paradigm shift in my own teaching career. Up until that point, I had believed in airtight scope and sequences, non-negotiable reading list, outside reading, same day, same delivery, mirror teaching. I realize now the reason I appreciated that philosophy was because I was afraid of being held accountable for the thing that's most important, inspiring students. Inspiring students to want to read. Inspiring students to want to talk about sometimes the tough questions. It was always easier for me to say, sorry guys, we got to read Julius Caesar. The state says we have to do it. It was always easier to cop out, apologize in advance, and then try to get through it. Now I ask myself, what would my students think about Julius Caesar? What's going on in the world around us that could relate? Or better yet, why not teach Othello? How would Othello better represent the anxiety and the angst of a typical 10th grade student? That's how we find meaning, by asking these questions. And they're not, from personal experience, comfortable questions. You see, master teachers understand that literature offers us quite simply a way to understand ourselves, to understand our own behaviors. So the question is, what do we read? Why teach certain literary pieces? If I can only teach 6 major texts a year, what should they be and why? I need to answer those questions long before my students can ever ask them. Teaching students to see relevancy in literature has nothing to do with teaching the most modern text. In fact, if we assume that students will only read new literature because it has new ideas, we are committing a fallacy of the worst kind. And to respond to that notion, I'm going to paraphrase a text that is virtually ignored by public education, the Bible. Ecclesiastes 1 and 9, there is nothing new under the sun. The message of our text is never really old. In fact, it's always new and it's always current. And so now, this year, when I taught Hamlet, I begin with this statement. The play is always new and always old. Everything I've always known is always there, but there's always something I never read before. Still, in this path towards relevancy, the teacher can only go so far. You can have the most amazing teachers in the world, but you can sit in a classroom and you can refuse to join the conversation, and the threads of these stories will not be woven into the fabric of your lives. To truly find personal relevancy, you have to engage in literature with an open heart and mind. I frequently instruct my students to approach literature without prejudice. Sometimes we call this presentism. Certainly we can't ignore troubling aspects of text. Medea killing her sons to exact revenge on Jason, truly heinous and hideous. I'm totally with you there. But can I understand why? When we reach that point, then we enter the world of empathy, and there is where we find meaning. We see, in fact, that there is a little bit of Medea in us all, because the play, like all forms of literature and art, holds up a mirror to ourselves and asks us to look deeply within us at these same values, at these same tendencies, even those tendencies that are troubling. So to read literature, to understand, and I'm going to speak primarily of the Western canon today, we have to have an open mind. That's important. But we also have to have some knowledge to back that up. So what I'm going to talk about now, and I'm going to kind of shift gears, is the reason why I teach what I teach. And I'm not going to speak to any other teacher, but there's a reason why I will always teach Shakespeare. There's a reason why I'm always going to teach mythology. And if I could ever get away with it, I teach some aspects of the Bible. But I'm going to talk to you about today why you should, on your own, pursue some study of the biblical canon.